Hello and welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your host, Buddy Sotelo Esquire. And this week we are doing a very special and unique show for us, which is our baseball show. And to join me this week from the other coast, but down in Florida, is our pal Benny Scala. Oh, and who is this here?
This is Brienne, who's celebrating her 1-year birthday today.
And my dog's birthday was yesterday, although Chance wants to have nothing to do with being on the...
He shies away from the spotlight?
No, he is not a spotlight dog.
Okay. Normally she's not either.
Him. Well, we rescued Chance from a homeless person that owned him, and he had been left homeless on the street, and there was an organization called Grateful Dogs Rescue.
Oh, nice.
That found him and united us, and then he fell in love with my daughter, and now he doesn't want to leave her side or have anything else.
That's a good thing, though.
Yeah, he really is not like any typical pit bull. He never barks. He's a big scaredy cat. Wow. And when people think of pit bulls being tough and rough dogs, he looks like he could be a super tough dog, but when you get to know him, he's just a big fraidy cat.
Yeah, but just don't tell anybody else that. Let them think that he's mean.
Well, I guess so. I think it's unfair what people say about pit bulls.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's there's no bad dogs, just bad owners.
Oh, there's some bad dogs out there, but that's a lot of them because of the bad owner.
Yeah, exactly.
Bad ownership. The only dog that has ever bitten me, we've fostered dogs for years and years, and the only foster dog that ever bit me was a Dachshund Chihuahua mix.
Really?
Yes. The big dogs, they never bite. They've always been so thankful and grateful that there are people that want to show them love, whereas the little ones are bratty and kind of entitled. Does that resemble the dog you've got right there?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
A little bit bratty, a little bit entitled.
I'm her property, and I exist for her.
So Benny is from the Dan and Benny show. Now, how did Dan get top billing over you on that
I don't know.
show?
Yeah, you would think Benny comes first in the alphabet.
Yes.
Right? Like I don't know. I think my contract's up for renegotiation, so I think that might be a bargaining point. Yeah.
Well, we'll trade Mike over for. You think Dan can stand, working with Mike every week for an hour?
I'd love to see that.
Don't worry. You say whatever you want about Mike. He never listens to the show.
Mike's a good guy.
But he never listens to this show.
That's he does. Shame on him.
He always lets he always says, "Oh, I'm sure the show was great," and he never bothers to listen. So
hands off, huh?
And I don't think he'll be listening to tonight's show either. He's not as big a baseball fan as I am, even though he was at the Giants victory parade. As he'll tell you, he was standing next to Tony Bennett on the stage taking pictures when the Giants won the World Series. The Tony Bennett's known for singing "I Left My Heart in San Francisco," and they play that after every Giants victory.
So now Mike's not a Dodger fan?
No, he stayed with the Northern California teams, thank God. Otherwise, I don't know how I could be friends with them.
Now, is anybody out there both? Or do you have to be one or the other?
You have to be one or the other.
Okay.
Really. It's tough enough for there to be A's and Giants fans, just like it's tough enough. You don't find many Mets and Yankees fans.
I'm one of them. Now, I am by default, though, because when I was growing up, my dad was the service manager for a local Chevy dealership, and one of his customers was the PR director for the Mets. So we got press box seats whenever I wanted.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, you talk about a free baseball game. So how could I not? I don't care if it's not the Yankees.
Who was on the team when you were watching them back then?
Well, the first time I ever went was in '64. Yeah, we probably for about 3 years. I was going, I would say probably 10 times a year. I remember one time, I don't know how this happened, and this would never happen again, but they were playing back-to-back twilight doubleheaders against the Astros.
Oh my God!
And I saw all 4 games.
Wow.
Yeah. And my dad wasn't even a baseball fan, but he was a good dad, and he knew how much I loved it, so he took me, and it was kind of cool.
My dad wasn't a good dad, but he loved baseball. That's the only thing that I have, still. Baseball and politics, sports and politics were the only things we really did agree upon. Everything else we didn't.
But yeah, I mean, I think the Mets suck. Now, if they did get in the World Series, as long as it wasn't against the Yankees, I'd want them to win, but they're not going to get in the World Series.
They're spending enough money that they should get to the World Series. And
everybody's hyping Buck Showalter. Buck Showalter, I think he's in his 22nd season. And before last year, I think he was in 21 seasons, he was like 30 games over 500. I don't think he ever won a playoff series.
No, that was definitely during a low time for the Yankees organization.
Buck is like Marty Schottenheimer. Remember when he coached like a number of teams with the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Browns,
Washington.
Yeah, always got in the playoffs.
Even was an assistant coach from my 49ers here in San Francisco.
But yeah, I mean, solid regular season coach, going to get you in the playoffs. And then you're going to be 1 and out. So same with Buck.
That being said, you Yankees have not won anything since the 2000s.
It's been the second longest drought in my life because I became a fan, like I said, in '64. They had lost that year to the Cardinals. They lost the year before to the Dodgers in 4 straight, and it wasn't until '77 that they won again. So that's 15 years. We're going on the 14th year, and quite honestly, I don't see it happening this year. Much as I'd like to wish that it would, I just don't see it happening. There's too many missing pieces in the puzzle there.
Well, another connection between the San Francisco Giants and the New York Yankees is how much we've wanted the players that wind up playing for the Yankees. Which one is Giancarlo Stanton. We made a huge pitch to try to bring him on board, and that didn't work out. And then, of course,
you can have him if you want.
This summer, I would take him right now. He would be like our best hitter if we had him.
Yeah, but he's always getting hurt.
Yeah, it's true. Although he's playing now, and he helped beat that tar out of us today in facing you guys.
He pulls the muscle pumping gas.
But the bigger deal was Aaron Judge. The Giants had that.
Yeah. I tell you what, I sweat that for a little bit. I'll be honest. I really thought there was a chance he was going to sign with them.
We did everything. We rolled out the red carpet, and every man, woman, and child was ready to buy a Judge jersey, and the Giants haven't really landed a big free agent since maybe Carlos Beltran.
Right.
And 2000, and that was in 2011. So really, the Giants have been. I mean, maybe you could say when we got Melancicum, that was a high price free agent, but he played like crap for us, so it didn't really work out very well.
And what was the deal with Judge though? What did they not offer him enough money?
I don't remember. Us. It was so much like the girl that like says, "So I'm going to ask another guy out if you don't get me." If not only got to take me to the prom, but you got to run a limo, and you got to take me out to the most expensive restaurant because if you don't, some other guy will. And as soon as New York saw the Giants putting in all that effort, then because they were really trying to lowball Judge.
Right.
He got another $100 million pretty much off of the Yankees, thanks to the Giants, getting on their hands and knees and begging Judge to come play.
But how many of these contracts really work out? How many they really look at Albert Pujols? How much money did he get? Like $275, I think. He never hit 300 for the Angels. I think he drove in 100 runs a couple of times.
But any tickets they sold were because he was on the team.
Right.
So that's one thing, is that they made their money off of him just by the potential of what he could provide.
Not by his actual
not
plan.
by necessarily what he did with his bat or all of that. It was just the name there. Although it is amazing when you see that they had Pujols there plus Mike Trout
and Ohtani.
plus Ohtani. And
they had the best manager, who I think is one of the best managers in baseball, in Joe Madden, and they couldn't do anything.
No, it does. Baseball is such a mysterious game in that respect. It's not often. It's unlike football where you really have such a hard salary cap, or even in the NBA where the salary cap carries with it a huge salary tax if you go over it. Baseball doesn't have anything like that, and yet lower echelon teams somehow find ways to compete. But it's not the worst teams. The worst teams stay bad in baseball, and they're that way forever. It seems like, Colorado has been horrible for as long as I can remember them being terrible, except for 1 or 2 years. They've been pretty much out of contention. And, in some of the other divisions, you have other teams just check out by the 15th, 20th game of the season. And, the whoever's at the top has a lead of, 35 games or 40 games over the last place team. And that's something that, I think really does affect baseball in a way that they've only recently addressed by expanding out the playoffs.
It's got to be disheartening, though, for your team to be out of it by, like, middle of May.
Oh, yeah. Well, the Giants have always tried to be competitive, and they haven't had a checkout season since maybe 2013. That was a pretty bad season. I think they only won 75 games. And, they were just – but then the year after that, they won the World Series.
Right.
So, that was the mercurial nature of the San Francisco Giants of that 2010 to 2014 era, was that they were an amazing team. Then they lost the next season. They didn't make the playoffs. Then they had another amazing year. Then the next year they lost. They didn't make the playoffs. Then they had another amazing year and won the World Series in 2014. And, as I said, you Yankees haven't even gone to a World Series pretty much since.
It's been a while. I mean, the one saving grace as a Yankee fan is that unless I live to be about 150, that when I go, we'll still have one more championships than anyone. But, I mean, people are starting to catch up, though.
Yeah, and the thing is, when you haven't been relevant in 15 years, the bragging rights start becoming a little bit hollow. When you haven't won something, a title in since what, 2007?
2009, but it's only been one in the last 22 years.
Yeah.
So
when it's then you don't become as exceptional.
Right.
Hey, look, it's that way. The 49ers. I mean, the 49ers won 5 Super Bowls, but then we haven't won anything since '95.
Right.
So we're getting down close to 30 years without winning winning a Super Bowl. We've been in a couple, but the fact that we haven't, or even like like the Jets fans.
I'm one of those.
Really? Well.
Oh yeah.
I'll have to rub your face in it when I have a chance.
Oh, you have to get in line for that.
But yes, we bring the show up because this is the first weekend of baseball, and the Giants did play the Yankees, and you won 2 out of 3. I'm not too surprised. I was just glad we didn't get swept, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I won initial bragging rights, but like I told you before the show, I'm not really happy as far as what I saw. I mean, the second game, I think, is more of an indication what's going to happen during the year. And it's pretty scary when you're the second game of the season, you have Clark Schmidt, who is Hans's grandson. Let's bring some wrestling into it, making his 6th major league start. And then, third game, you have Johnny Brito, who's is Dino's grandson, or Gino, right? Gino Brito.
Yes.
Making his first major league start. I mean, that's your rotation. So I think it's going to be a lot. You can only pitch Garrett Cole so many times, and then it's not even.
Well, I think the Yankees plan on out hitting, their opponents, and your pitching not being necessarily what gets you where
right.
To.
But I mean, you got Stanton, like I said. I mean, the guy pulls the muscle pumping gas, and then he's out for a month. Yeah, Judge. Now, last year, of course, Judge was healthy, but before that, I mean, how many injury-prone seasons did he have? So, they're an injury, and they've been historically over the last 10 years. They spend more time in the IL than anyone. So it's very precarious. And if you're counting those bats, I don't think it's going to carry us. I'd be shocked if we were doing this show in November and I was gloating.
Well, that would, but on the other hand, I see baseball moving towards a more offensive game as opposed to a defensive game now. And we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah, because I actually did compile a bunch of stats, and I think one of the rules changes was for stolen bases, making the bag larger to enable more stolen bases. And I didn't realize this, but the active leader in stolen bases is Elvis Andrus with 336, and he's number 124 on the all-time list. So, yeah,
Lou Brock, he is not.
Lou Brock, Ricky, even some of the guys from back in the day was Billy Collins, Eddie Collins rather. Maybe it was Tom Collins. I don't know. It's been a long day. But yeah, you don't have anybody who's stealing 70, 80, the Vince Colemans or anybody like that stealing the 100 bases a season. I think you do have a lot more players on the team stealing bases. Like the Yankees are going to have Judge is going to have, a dozen stolen bases and guys like that. But you're not going to have that one dominant guy like a Mickey Rivers back in the day for the Yankees who stole, 60.
Well, yeah, and every team had someone on their squad that was like a fast base runner that they would pinch run in, when they wanted to try to take advantage of it. But also, and we're gonna go get to all the different role changes, but I think that there's just this general desire for games to have more offense involved in fewer pitching duels where you have, 1-0, 2-3, 3-1 type ball games. They'll still be those, but if you look across the board, like for the first two games this season, you see a lot of runs being put on the board.
It's become a whole different game than when I was a kid. I mean, one of the stats that I looked up was the number of strikeouts per season. And in 1961, for whatever reason, I used 61. I guess because that was the year of the AL expansion. But there was 14,947 strikeouts in 1961. I think it was an average of 4.61 per team per game. And in 2021, that almost tripled to 42,104. Now, granted, there were 30 teams instead of 20, but now you're at 8.66 strikeouts per team per game. So you're almost double. It's
well, and then you look at the game one against the Giants and the Yankees. That had 26 strikeouts, right?
Right.
So my God, I mean that's just if they weren't getting a hit, they were striking out. That's pretty much the only option that gives you, when you have that many strikeouts per team, you were getting pretty much one or two per inning.
But you have guys like, one of the other metrics that I looked at was strikeouts per plate appearance. So I looked at the three greatest of my childhood, which is Mays, Mantle, and Aaron. So Aaron struck out once every 10.08 plate appearances. Mays 8.22, Mantle 5.80. So Mantle was more of a strikeout guy. But then you look at Judge, Ohtani, and Trout. Judge strikes out every 3.48, Ohtani 3.71, and Trout 4.55. I should have included Barry Bonds because I bet Bonds was closer to Aaron than he was to Judge.
Well, he didn't strike out much because he was intentionally walked a crazy number of times.
Was that one season he was walked in total, I think, 232 times, and I think 120 was intentional.
It was crazy. They used to hang chickens, rubber chickens, at the yard in the inning for every time someone would walk Barry because they would intentionally walk him. Because the idea was they were too chicken to put him up at the plate. And so, there'd be these rubber chickens hanging on underneath the scoreboard over at Oracle Park. Well, now Oracle, back then it was Pac Bell or AT&T. So, yeah, it was, it got to, and they would play the chicken dance, and everyone would, put on chicken helmets when Barry Bonds got intentionally walked, because it was just such it was a chicken move, but I guess we look back on it now, were they too chicken to, or are they smart not to put a guy they knew was gonna launch the ball out of the park if he got a chance to make any kind of connection with him.
How many times was he walked with the bases loaded intentionally?
I remember at least a dozen times.
Right.
Where that happened.
And the year that he walked 120 times intentionally, what was the runner-up? I mean, maybe 25. I mean, just total dominance. Just show what kind of ball player he was. And, say what you want about him, but I think of the last, 50, 75 years, you got to think he's the best.
Well, except that Shohei Ohtani is showing, what an amazing skill level he's bringing to the game and doing something that, no one has ever done before in the history of baseball. I mean, to be able to pitch, to be an effective pitcher and an effective hitter, when those two things couldn't be further apart now in this
The only
era.
other player in history was Babe Ruth.
And really, Babe Ruth was not that great of a pitcher. He was good, but he was obviously a much better hitter than he was a pitcher.
If you look at his stats, though, I think he was 94 and 46, which is not bad. But, I mean, you're also, you're playing in a...
weak era.
You're playing in a you're pitching only during the day, and you're pitching, you had no black players. You're pitching in an all-white league.
And guys were part of baseball, but they weren't full-time, professional athletes,
Right.
Back in, that's one thing, is that back in the 1900s and all the way really till the 70s, a lot of players only, worked baseball or football or basketball part-time, and then they would go back to grocery stores and casino bouncing jobs and car dealerships and what have you, insurance sales for the other part of the year. They didn't practice all year to being professional athletes.
Yogi Berra and Joe Garagiola, and Yogi would even get a World Series check pretty much every year, but they worked at Sears in St. Louis in the off season for years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing how much money they make now compared to how much they made back then.
Well, it pays in that respect then to devote your full time to being an athlete. That when you're making that much money and you stand to make more money if you're physically successful, then you get people just, that's all they do now. And of course, from everyone from even though he's a golf player, to Tiger Woods, to Johnny Manziel, and Todd Marinovich. You have these kids that are being programmed from day one to be, monster quarterbacks or golf players or pitchers or, Olympic athletes or pro athletes. And that's all they can do. And I think in the end, that usually doesn't work out all that well for them. For every one of these kids that make it, there's dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands, that wind up, not making it, and how they, are able to cope with that. If that's all they've ever learned how to do and all they've ever learned to be with, it doesn't have that great a result.
Right. I'm just amazed. I looked at the average team payroll. I didn't write the stats down. I should have, though. And the league payroll. And I think, even like in the past 30 years, even after free agency, it's increased geometrically as far as the average player's salary, the average team payroll. I think some players now are making what the league payroll was 30 years ago.
Yes, for just individual.
Right. Judge is probably making more, the league in 1990.
Sure, or what, like maybe close to what the Oakland A's entire payroll is. He probably earns like about half. Just his own salary is like more than half of what the Oakland A's payroll is for this year. So
one of the teams I have to give credit for is the one down here, though. The Rays, they don't really pay out a lot, and they seem to compete every year. They always they did invest a lot of money in their scouting department, and it's paying off dividends because unlike the Yankees, who they grow from or historically have grown from the tops down, the Rays have grown from the bottoms up.
Well, the Yankees have a very good minor league team. That provides talent for them, called the Oakland A's.
It used to be the Kansas City A's back in the day.
But that's pretty much what the A's have turned into. Is they pretty much are the talent scouts for the Yankees, Boston Red Sox, LA Dodgers. When those teams need a top player, they just take whoever's good for the A's and offer them a huge contract, and away they go.
That's what the Expos did that back in the day. The Montreal Expos, they'd have these great prospects, and then when they came eligible for free agency, somebody just plucked them away because they couldn't afford to pay them.
Absolutely. So, what do you think about the idea that they've added a pitching clock to the game?
Well, so it seems like in the last 60 or so, in 1961. The average time per game was 2 hours and 34 minutes. 2021, 3 hours and 10 minutes. So an increase of 23%. I mean, it's going to speed up the game, but now this is just me. I never go to a baseball game with the intent like, well, I got to get out of here in 2.5 hours. I'm not really. I mean, if it takes 3 hours, it takes 3 hours. I mean, maybe if I'm watching on TV, maybe I get I lose attention a little bit sooner, but I don't know. I mean. I'm in no particular rush, and I think the reason why the game has the average time per game has gone up 36 minutes is because of how the game has changed as far as pitching. Because back in the day, maybe 30-40% of the starts went up in complete games, and now maybe you have 1 out of 100. Complete games are rarity now. So all those pitching changes now. I mean, you probably have at least 3-4 pitching changes a game. That added to the time of the game, and I guess they're trying to catch it on the back end with the clock. I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll have to see. I so far, I do see it. I mean, it's noticeable how fast the pitchers are getting, into their rhythm. And I saw one, I guess, was it on opening game when one of the batters didn't get back in the batter's box I guess you have to be in there with 8 seconds left, and they charged the strike on him. So it's definitely different than what what I've grown up with.
I got so tired of watching guys adjust their gloves, though.
Right.
There were guys that were just taking the glove adjustment and abusing that to the highest degree, where they would literally adjust their gloves after every swing. And it's like, come on, how much is your swing affected by your gloves? Really? It's like, do the same guys, like before they go into their car, like adjust their tire inflation and at every stop sign, like check the air in their tires, and add in like a half pound or take off a half pound.
Right.
I mean, it was becoming an affect rather than something that had anything to do with whether or not that was helping their game. They're doing it to slow the game down on purpose. And I do like to see a lot less of the equipment adjustment in the games that I watched this weekend.
What was that guy's name? Was it Mike Hargrove? His nickname was the Human Rain Delay.
Yes.
And he had this gigantic ritual that he went through, adjusting his jock. I mean, zipping his fly, whatever the heck he did, erasing the chalk lines. And it seemed like a minute between pitches. To me, it was just one of those things. It was part of the game, and you had to live with it. But I guess
you didn't have to.
Right. I mean,
and I see guys more focused on their at bats, and I think the pitchers are more focused, and they also have limited the amount of pitch outs that that you can do to try to pick off guys. You won't have this, pitchers doing it 8 times, throwing back to first base, when obviously the guy's not going to. If you throw it back there twice, he's not going to try to run, by the 5th time you throw back there. If he knows you're paying that much attention to it. And hardly those guys ever get picked up. And then you add to that the fact that, the bases are a little bit bigger, so it's a little bit less work to get back to the base. I think that's kept it more clean and focused. And then the other thing too is they got rid of the shift. What was your thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that, I guess. It's really funny that the rule change I have the most problem with is the guy on second base. I can't wrap my arms around that. The other ones I'm okay with, even the shift change. I'm okay with that. I just that whole thing with the runner on second, I'll never get used to that one.
Well, my thought would be this: in the 9th inning, you should have nobody on base. In the 10th inning, they should put a runner on first. The 11th inning, they should put a runner on first and second. And the 12th inning, they should put runners on first, second, and third. And then from that point, the bases are loaded, after 12 innings. Because I think the idea is that a 13-inning game is pretty ridiculous. That's a lot of, it's too much extra baseball. That's like an equivalent of 5 overtimes in the NBA. In the NFL, you can just flat out tie. So
it's funny because the very first game that I went to, I think it was in August of 1964. It was the Mets against the Giants at Shea Stadium, and I think there was 5 Hall of Famers that played on the Giants. It would have been, Mays, McCovey, Marichal, Cepeda, and the last one though was Duke Snider, who was playing his final season with the Giants. And then the only Hall of Famer that on the Mets was Casey Stengel, but it was 14 innings. And then I went to a Yankee game later on in the season, and it was a twilight doubleheader against the Red Sox, and the first game was 20 innings.
Oh,
but when you're a kid, you don't care. I mean, you wish it never ends. But as an adult, it's you think, well, I got to get up for work. I got to do this, and you can't. You don't have that luxury anymore. So yeah, I mean.
Well, this is the irony. Is that you'll chuckle at this. My uncle had season tickets to the Giants, and he lived in Burlingame, which is literally right across the freeway from Candlestick Park. I mean, it's only 4 exits south of where Candlestick Park was, and he still would want to leave early so he didn't have to get stuck in traffic. We left games at the 7th inning.
No matter what the score?
Yeah. In fact, we left a Dodgers game where the Giants were down 1-2, and Robbie Thompson wound up hitting a bases loaded double to win the game in the 9th.
Yeah, I would never do that. I can't. I'll bear with the traffic. I'm too much of a fan.
Well, here I will say that Candlestick, and you never had a chance, obviously, to go to Candlestick Park, I don't assume.
No, I did not.
It was legendary for having one of the worst entry and exit points for any park in maybe the world, of any stadium in the world. It had only 2 ways to get in and out, pretty much. And it was also, the back parking lot was built on a reclaimed swamp. So anytime it got wet or low tide would kick in, then you would just get stuck in a miasma of mud. And one time for 49ers game, which granted was a lot more cars than at a Giants game, but at a 49er game, one time it took me 3 hours to get out of the parking lot and just to get onto the freeway because it was just that messed up and there was just too many cars, not enough. Now where the park is now, it's centrally located in downtown San Francisco. There's a number of ways you can get out of there. So that is one of the pluses. In fact, the moment I went to what is now Oracle, but back then was Pac Bell Park, the moment I went inside it, I said to myself two things. I said, one, why wasn't the park always in this location? And two, why didn't it always look like this? Because even though we're talking about 25 years close to when that park was made, it still looks like a great new park.
Right.
It does. I mean, Candlestick looked old even in the 70s when it was relatively a young park. It looked old because of the way they built it. And I mean, it was still a great park and amazing memories and Joe Montana and Will Clark and, as you pointed out, early Barry Bonds and all that stuff, and Mays, McCovey, all that stuff, went down over in at Candlestick. But it was just such a horrible place to play.
Wasn't there a pitcher who literally got blown off the mound because of the wind?
Oh, yeah. We used to, my brother and I used to go to, there were these double doors that would take you to the concession stands. And we would actually lean up against them, our full, feet, off the ground, laying backwards into them. And we couldn't open the doors. The wind that was coming in from the park was so severe. You literally could not push it back except with the maximum amount of force. It was the way they relocated the new park, or it's not so new, but Oracle, you don't get any wind at all. They the top part is kind of a windshield that keeps the wind that comes in off the bay from reflecting down onto the fans, and it's an ideal park. It's really great place. So I wanted to find out about great baseball folks that you've met or interviewed or anything like that. Have you ever had any of them on your show?
No, I have not. The only ball player that I ever had a prolonged conversation with was, believe it or not, I don't know if you remember Jim Eisenreich, who started out with the Twins in the early 80s, and he was actually diagnosed with Tourette's. He missed a couple of seasons. They didn't know what was wrong with him. Then I lived in Kansas City from 1990 through 1995, and he played for the Royals then, and actually went to the same church that I did in Blue Springs, Missouri, and just the nicest guy. You'd never know he was a major league ball player. So we had a number of chats, but he's pretty much the only one. Now, there is a ball player, and his name, I think he's from Northern California, I believe. His name is Ross Moschito. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
No, I haven't.
This is somebody I would love to get on the show because he played one season. No, he played parts of two seasons with the Yankees in 64 and 65. His number was 53. They called him Mickey Mantle's legs because at that point, Mantle was kind of winding down at center field.
So he pinch hit for him?
Yeah, well, no, he usually either pinch run or just like in the eighth inning, he would substitute for Mantle. Well, I went to this game in 65 against the Twins, and it's even amazing. Even when I say that, I get goosebumps. But the Maris Mantle, Pepitone, who actually Joe Pepitone was my cousin for about 15 minutes. I think one of his 11 ex-wives was my cousin. I don't think it lasted very long, but he hit a home run. Phil Lindsay,
Did you ever meet Joe
Pepitone? Did you ever meet him? No, my sister, he lived in Farmingdale, Long Island, which is where I grew up. My sister was still living there, and so was he. And she got to chat with him a number of times, said he was a great guy. I guess he passed away a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
But Ross Moschito, that's the reason why I remember this game more than anything, besides Mantle and Maris homering, is that Moschito hit one off the left field foul pole, and it was his one and only major league home run. That was it. And
Wow.
I actually wrote a story. I'm waiting for it to be published by Through the Fence Baseball. But I think he's from somewhere in Modesto, maybe. Very good athlete, and he's still around. I think he's probably about 78, 79. Just to interview him and ask him what was it like, number one, playing in the same team with Mickey Mantle, Whitey Ford, and those guys, and number two, hitting that home run. It was your one. At least nobody can take that away from you. It's your one and only. But yeah, other than that, pretty sheltered life as far as actually meeting ball players.
Wow. Well, then I have a few stories I can throw out there. First of all, the most famous baseball player to go to our high school joined my networking group. And when you talk about Kansas City, that one of the more famous guys from Kansas City World Series team was Buddy Biancalana.
Oh, yeah.
And Buddy was part of my networking group for about a year, where he's actually got a great idea on selling people a technique that finds where their sweet spot is, whether they're swinging a tennis racket or a baseball bat or at the arc of their shot, and like finding a computer program that helps people get into that mode more often than not. And so Buddy Biancalana is a guy that I can say, if not a close friend, he totally knows me if
What a great name too, Buddy Biancalana.
Well, do you remember him on David Letterman?
No, I don't.
The Buddy Biancalana's story was he was on David Letterman. David Letterman had a Buddy Biancalana hit counter. They said, how many hits until he meets up with Pete Rose? And Pete Rose had like 3,000 something, 4,000 hits or something.
400 maybe.
Yeah, and so every time Buddy Biancalana got a hit, you were supposed to hit the hit counter. And then Buddy Biancalana heard about that and came on his show. And then during the show, David Letterman mentioned about the hit counter, and he said, "Yes, I told my mom about that, and my mom said, Buddy, you're a lot closer to Pete Rose in hits than David Letterman is to Johnny Carson in laughs."
Nice.
And David Letterman thought that was really hilarious. So another time I had the luck of being able to interview an exclusive interview with Orlando Cepeda.
David Cha-Cha.
Yes, he was. I was part of a journalism pool that was supposed to get in touch an interview with Orlando at this restaurant called Compadres in Sacramento as part of a newsletter called The Bounce. And for whatever reason, I still don't know to this day, and it's like 30 years ago, I showed up and none of the other press people showed up. So it was me and Orlando Cepeda sitting in a room together for like 45 minutes. So I got to do like a 45-minute interview of Orlando Cepeda. I mean, what a nice guy. I mean, amazing human being. Just really tremendous person. I got to ask him.
Ball player, too. He got overshadowed by Mays and McCovey, but man, oh man, he was good.
He really was. And just, his marijuana offense and how unfair that was. And he's a Buddhist. I don't know if you knew. A lot of people don't know that.
No, I didn't know that.
And devoted at that, and I thought that was really incredible of him to find out all of his faith. And then I do another sports talk show on Tuesdays called Sports Econ at sportsecon101.com. And since then we do the Dave Casper golf tournament, and to raise money for charities in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we have a lot of people stop by, including notables such as Vida Blue. And
wow.
Vida Blue,
man,
you can only get people as nice and as fun as Vida Blue. You can't find someone nicer. You can't. He's like, wherever he goes, he gets people to laugh and shake his hand and smile, and he's got like in just like this little finger right here, he has more stories than like an encyclopedia of baseball. The guy is a living encyclopedia of baseball, and just his experiences and everything he's done, and yet he's humble about it. You know, even though he was the only, I think, AL NL pitcher to be on Sports Illustrated's cover as both an AL and as an NL pitcher.
Right. So it started with the A's and he pitched for the Giants.
Yeah.
Somebody like that, because what was he, 24-8 his rookie season or something like that?
It was phenomenal. He was
8 shutouts, I think he struck out 301 guys. I wonder what a guy like that thinks, because I mean, what kind of money did he make? And he's got to like figure out like what would I make now with that kind of season? Well, I would think that would drive him crazy.
And and I didn't bring it up, but you know, he had all the drug problems during that time, so he didn't even get to keep a lot of it because he spent a lot of it on on the wrong things. And then last summer when we had the event, I had the decency of first meeting reliever George Contos for the Giants, but a guy that is a personal hero of mine, and so glad that I met him, and that was Matt Cain. Matt Cain, Mr. Perfect, is one of the nicest guys I've ever met in any of the interviews I've ever given or taken from any athlete in any way, shape, or form. Just a total gee whiz, gosh, golly, like, humble and understanding of the fans and what his perfect game meant to Giants fans, and I just gushed all over him. I just was like, they say don't meet your heroes, but if your hero's Matt Cain, you want to meet him, because he's one of the most down to earth, genuine, real, non-big time, doesn't pretend like he's something special, even though, I mean, how many people are you ever going to meet in your lifetime that throw a friggin' perfect game in baseball?
How many perfect games have there been in the history of baseball? Like 30?
Oh, no, it's more like 9 or 10.
Yeah, it's a very small number.
Yeah, it's very small, and especially in this day and age, when nobody gets a complete game. I mean, you get what, like 5 complete games the league wide all year from anybody? I mean, from a total the league totally summed up, you get less than 10 complete games pitched.
You'd have to be like, what was that movie, The Scout, with Brendan Fraser? Remember that movie?
No, I have not seen it.
Oh, okay. It's a great baseball movie with Albert Brooks and Brendan
Fraser.
Oh,
wait a minute. Yes.
Yeah, he plays Steve Nebraska.
Okay, yes, and, I do remember it. I've seen it a long time ago.
81 pitches, 81 strikes, 27 strikeouts. That's going to be the only scenario where you do see a perfect game. Otherwise, they're going to get. I mean, they get yanked now when they're throwing a perfect game.
Yeah, it's too formulaic now. Well, we've seen a couple of instances where that could have happened. The managers will just go into that instinctive move where at the 7th inning you get the candy striped hook, whether or not you have 24 strikeouts at that, or 21 strikeouts. Before that they'll say, you know what, you hit 100 pitches. We're in the 7th inning. We have our 8th and 9th guy, that are being paid to, pitch the 8th inning, pitch the 9th inning. That's become so rote automatic that it doesn't matter that you're having a perfect game. They'll still yank you.
Use a Giant reference. I mean, how many 150 pitch games did Juan Marichal have?
It's
year after year, pitching, every 4th day, 300 innings, winning 20 some odd games, and he, never got hurt, just kept going. Yeah.
No, there's so many things. Like, I feel like the Cal Ripken consecutive game record is going to be never beaten in our lifetime, because with load management and guys getting hurt, playing Nintendo, and I mean, baseball has some of the flukiest injuries that you can get.
Right.
Even Matt Cain himself, I think, once hurt his hand cutting frozen hamburgers with a knife, and the knife slipped and cut his hand.
Who's the guy that got ran over by the automatic tarp and it broke his leg?
Yeah,
Vince Coleman. That's a.
Yes, and I mean, there's guys who play video games all weekend long and get Nintendo thumb, and guys that trip over their dog or step on a piece of glass at the beach, or
right.
There's just all sorts of and guys just the guys who get hurt swinging. Although now with the designated hitter in both leagues, you're gonna have pitchers get hurt less,
right,
than they were when they would go out to bat. It's something never really understood why pitchers were so bad at swinging. As a National League guy, I've always begrudged the designated hitter, but I'll admit, that got put in place, and I was on my platitudes and how much I hate American League Baseball, but after 2 years, I'm getting used to it. It did change the strategy a lot, and I always liked the idea of you having to sacrifice defense for offense, and I don't like the fact that the pitcher is the only spot in any sport that doesn't have to play both offense and defense.
But I bet you have good memories of a Giants pitcher hitting a home run. You have to.
Oh God, yes. Especially Madison Bumgarner.
Oh yeah. Oh
he was something that really could. He was actually a real threat at the plate. When he would swing, and I always admired that. When guys like Rick Russell or Don Robinson would luck out and hit like a double to help their own cause out. But by and large, they would usually strike out. So anyway,
back in the day, you had like a Drysdale or a Warren Spahn. Like Drysdale was a very good hitter.
Well, and now we have Shohei Ohtani.
Right.
So he's better than most designated batters these days to even hit home runs. But believe it or not, we're running up against the hour here.
That went way too fast.
I know. It is fun. Just as I said, if you lived in Northern California, if you lived in San Francisco, we probably would have been pals growing up. If I lived in New York, I probably would have been your pal growing up, because we just have so many things in common.
And we probably wound up going to ball games together.
Yeah, probably. I wonder what my life would be like as a Yankees fan. That would have been a very interesting what if, because I feel I'm such a dedicated Giants fan, and it's so. Or of course, what if the Giants never moved out from New York?
Right.
Would I be an A's fan, or what would baseball have meant so much to me? Because the Giants are such a big part of everything that I believe in.
What if the A's never moved from Philadelphia?
Well, there would have been expansion at some point in time here in the Bay Area, because this Northern California area really is a very strong sports community.
Yeah, eventually it would have happened.
Yeah. I mean, they would have said, I don't think we would have wound up being like Portland, that had just, a football, just a basketball team and nothing else. I think
they had a phenomenal, legendary minor league baseball team, the Mavericks.
Yeah,
owned by Kurt Russell's dad.
We had the Seals here.
Right.
Joe
DiMaggio played for the Seals. Yeah.
Yes.
Back in the day.
And we had some other big players play for them. I think
the PCL, right, Pacific Coast League. Was a huge minor league.
Yeah, it's still here, and we still, we have Sacramento has a lot of baseball interest. So somewhere in Northern California, there would have been a baseball team, even if it hadn't been the Giants or the A's. But something would have happened there. So, any predictions for your thoughts on Major League Baseball for this year?
I hate to say it. I mean, the way I see it playing out, my Yankees are going to win 90-something games. They're going to get in the playoffs, and then they're going to get beat by the Astros, and it's going to, it's going to be a long winter. I hope I'm wrong, but
I think the Astros have what it takes to win again.
Yeah, just by default, I don't think the Yankees have what it takes. They just have too many holes. How do you win a pennant without at least 4 reliable starters?
There hasn't been a back-to-back champion in baseball since your Yankees.
Right.
So that in itself, says something about how hard it is to repeat.
I can only imagine, having grown up, like I was born in 55, but from 49 through, was it 53, they won 5 in a row, and that was routine. I mean, they won 4 in a row a couple of times, 3 in a row several times. Just, they'd win year after year. It was kind of expected.
Sure, but then you only had 2 teams going to the playoffs in each
Right.
division, and everything was so much shorter. And now with wild cards and so forth, there's a lot more competition to get teams into the World Series, and it's a lot harder to repeat. I think it's there's just so many options and things that can go wrong during the season that it's just no team has found a way to do it.
And I think they've still made it hard enough, unlike a hockey, to get into the playoffs. You still have to have a decent team. You can't be sub 500. Well, I guess theoretically you could be under 500 and make.
Well, now, yeah, with the play-in games, the one,
right?
Yeah. So far, those haven't made it in or gone anywhere, but you never know. What? Look, if you're follows college basketball, we've got San Diego State in the NCAA finals tomorrow.
Right.
Which
I was kind of living here in Florida, and I actually was down in Boca last weekend.
Florida Atlantic must have been a sensation.
Yeah, and they lost that game yesterday. It was a heartbreaker. It
was amazing.
Yeah, very good game, and I was talking to somebody else about it. I think what the way it would have played out, even if they did win, I think they would have got demolished by UConn. So at least they got spared that by losing to San Diego State. Now they can say, well, we came within 0.8 of a second of getting in the national championship game, rather than saying we made it and we lost by 30 points to UConn. I don't see anybody beating UConn.
I think UConn's, but you know what? I'm not going to say my picks were so bad. I had Alabama against Kansas for the final 2.
Yeah.
So I'm just not even going to pretend like I know anything about college basketball. In fact, I'll just say that hopefully I know something about baseball. Like the Giants to at least find a way to crawl into that final playoff spot. But I have a terrible feeling that the Dodgers may, finally pull their crap together and be a world champion, which is always my nightmare.
I'm going to say L.A. Houston in the World Series with L.A. winning.
No! Wow, I would still root for my old man Dusty Baker. And he's a NorCal native too. He's from Sacramento and all that. So I think I'd still root for, as much as I usually say I root for the NL over the AL team. I'll never root for the Dodgers, no matter what.
Right.
They're probably like my equivalent of your Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, I mean that's the one saving grace is they're supposed to be so bad this year we don't have to worry about them.
Yes, but you never know. It all has to play out. So
right.
So anyway, Benny, it's been fantastic having you on the show.
Yeah, it went too fast. We got to do it again
this week, and I love being on your guys' show. So when you guys have as I've always said, when you completely run out of every possible guest, I'm always there for your
when what's his name, Mighty Joe Thunder cancels.
Yes, in case of Gilbert is I think he's dead now, isn't he?
No, I think he'd be kind of alarmed to hear that. No, I think he's still alive.
Oh, okay, Gilbert. I was gonna say if Gilbert cancels on you, then I'm always good. I'm always there as an emergency guest.
Or the Mulkey brothers.
Yeah, the Mulkeys. Yes, the Mulkeys get too busy. Virgil is
they have travel delays.
But and also I got to say what was great about tonight was we didn't until now not one word of WrestleMania, which I got to be telling you.
No, I guess it's done for the night. But we were chatting about baseball while Cody and I have no idea who even won.
No, so that's good. It was nice. I had enough wrestling. The build up for WrestleMania was so big and over the top that I'm actually glad.
All I got to do is look at my Facebook page and I'll see it 128 times.
Exactly. Tomorrow night they're gonna say who won on Raw, and I can live with, and they'll show stuff from all the big matches, and there'll be rematches of every match that meant anything anyway.
Right. You can.
So I'll just deal with that.
Yep.
All right. Well, hey, it's great having you on the show. Give my regards to Dan, and I'll see you again real soon.
All right.
Thank you very much. Good night.
All right. Good night.